everyone. Welcome to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the advertising manager. I'm glad to be back and welcome you all to Textiles and Tea today. Couple of things. One, I'm coming over a cold, so I apologize for my froggy throat, and I may be coughing a little bit as we go, but we'll muddle through this. And also, I want to thank Katie and Tegan for sitting in for me while I was gone. They did such a wonderful job, and I do appreciate it. If you didn't get to see their episodes, check it out. They did a great job. I told them not to do a really good job and make me look bad, but they did it anyway. So thank you, Tegan. Thank you, Katie. We appreciate it. We do want to thank our sponsor today, Claudia Coco. Claudia, thank you so much for being a sponsor of Textiles and Tea. It's so nice when an individual steps up and says, I want to make this happen. So thank you so much, Claudia. We appreciate it. We hope you enjoy this episode today. We will have questions, as always, at the end of the program, the last 15 minutes. So please put your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat. Love the chat. Keep that coming. But I can't always see those questions when they're over there. We are excited today to have Kristin Crane. Kristin, excuse me, Kristin is a weaver, a designer living in Providence, Rhode Island. She graduated from Philadelphia College of Textiles and Science. Today it's called Thomas Jefferson University, with a degree in textile design with a concentration in woven. Kristin began her career designing jacquard fabrics for the residential home furnishings market with mills in the United States and China. Her designs were sold primarily to jobbers such as Robert Allen, Kravet, and Duralee. Today, she is the director of marketing for Design Pool, an online pattern library, and she maintains an art practice from her home studio. And we are so excited to have her here today. Hey, Kristin.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. And thank you so much to our sponsor too, Claudia Coco.
Oh, that's sweet. Yes, thank you, Claudia. Let's start with that tough question. What is your favorite tea?
Well, my favorite tea is from Trader Joe's. Their well-rested blend.
Well-rested?
I tend to drink tea at night. So it's my pre-going to bed tea, but I thought, you know, a little nervous today, so I'm going to have my well-rested before we chat too.
All right. All right. We don't want you to be nervous. We want you to have fun today.
I will.
Okay, when I was learning all about you, I was really impressed about how you weave on the whole gamut of scale of size yarns. Weaves. You have a 16 shaft Macomber, you have a Merrick's tapestry loom, and you also weave on pin looms. So talk a little bit about the attraction of each of those looms. They're so different.
I know. So, well, the Macomber is sort of like my ride or die loom. You know, I bought it right after I graduated college because I just wanted to keep weaving after I graduated. And that's what they had in Philly Textiles. So I knew I wanted to buy that and kind of ordered it right after I graduated. And it's pretty much dictated every apartment I've lived in since then. In retrospect, it's like, could have maybe gotten a smaller one, but it's made it into every apartment and up lots of flights of stairs. And yeah, it's really the smaller ones kind of came more recently. I guess like kind of during the pandemic, I saw this little ad for like these tiny little Hello Looms. They're like the size of a phone. And I like to have like a sketchbook and a journal. And I thought, oh, maybe if I had this tiny loom, I could loom on the, weave on the go too. So I bought one of those. And then as I was weaving with it, I kind of realized I was kind of trying to do tapestry weaving, so I just felt like, oh, I kind of want to make some images and shapes. And this was, lockdown-ish, a little after hard lockdown, but I was home a lot and had a lot of time, a lot of creative time. So I bought a little Merrick's saffron loom and signed up for the Rebecca Mezoff Intro to Tapestry Weaving class and kind of got hooked. So I thought, all right, I'm just going to keep the saffron until I'm bored or want more ends per inch. I'm just going to kind of keep practicing. And so eventually I did get a bigger Merrick's loom not that long ago. I found one used because I hit a point where I wanted more ends per inch. Certain shapes were kind of hard to make. So yeah, and everyone jokes now that the tapestry ones get addictive, that you just keep buying like different sizes, and I could see where that could happen.
Well, how did you start with fiber to begin with?
Um, I kind of feel like fiber was just always in my life. My mom was a home ec teacher, so she sewed a lot, and I just feel like her sewing machine was around a lot when we were growing up. She was always making Halloween costumes or, kind of, Christmas things. And we were also kind of like a crafty family. I feel like we had hobbies, there was like a lot of us in the house. So we kind of had things we could do to kind of keep ourselves occupied. And I was always sort of drawn to the more fiber things like sewing. And, I remember getting that like plastic canvas and making Christmas ornaments. And then when I got older, there were still sewing classes when I went to high school. So I took clothing all through high school and did costumes for school plays and then learned to knit in high school too. And I really took to knitting. I really loved that a lot. And yeah, so then when it was time to look for colleges, it's funny to look back because I thought here I was doing all this textile stuff. And I just was like, what do I want to go to college for? I had no idea. I was kind of clueless. And I was applying to schools and getting into schools. And finally, my mom was like, you don't look excited about getting into any of these schools. So she suggested we go look at Philly Textile. She had toured it with my older sister. She's like, I think you'd like this school. They have, sewing thing, and we toured it. And I just remember walking the halls thinking like, oh yeah, this feels more like me. There were sewing machines and I didn't even know textile design was a thing out there. I always felt like, oh, I'm crafty, but I'm not creative or something, so yeah, I just read through the textile design thing and I thought like, oh, there's a knit design class. All right, I'll just sign up for this. And as soon as I got there, I was like, okay, like this. And then when I had my first weave studio class, I thought, all right, I love a loom. I kind of thought I'd like doing the knit design a little bit more, but as soon as I sat down at the loom, something really clicked for me.
And then you get introduced to a whole range of looms there too, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, because you do weave design, print design, and knit design. So you have to take all those courses. And you do a lot of the creative classes, plus a lot of the technology classes, which I really liked too. Like I feel like my brain likes math. And so I liked that side of it too. And yeah, and then they had this whole weave, you had like your floor looms, but then they had the dobbies we had to crank in the pegs and then the compy dobbies, the jacquard looms. And it was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm glad you found your niche. We are all happy you found your niche by
Yes,
going
I
there.
found it too. My mom was right.
Yay to your mom. Yay to your mom. Well, you worked at a commercial setting and designing for a mill, right?
Yeah.
And then it closed. And I'm curious, if it hadn't closed, do you think you'd still be there today doing that? Or
That's a really good question and kind of sends me a little like on this existential, like, what would my life be like? Because at the time, I mean, like all the mills were closing. So there was this huge, and I felt like my skills at that point were very like narrow. I thought like I'm a weaving, like I didn't feel like I could easily, if things went wrong, could I easily switch to another occupation or so. So at the time, and I was still pretty early enough in my career that I thought I got a while still to go. So I was able to do kind of like go back to school for some graphic design training and then it meandered, as it does. So I wanted, because I kind of feel like if it hadn't closed, like I probably would have stayed on that path, or who knows, like would I have gotten ready to leave it at a different point? I don't know. That's because I do sometimes, it's easy to kind of look back with rose colored glasses to the good times and what I miss about it. But at the same time, I do remember being there thinking there were parts of it that I guess like any job, that aren't great. And that time I remember feeling like, oh my God, there's so much like waste that gets generated. And I think back to how much we used to weave just to pick like colors for a color line, just, yeah, I don't know. It's curious, but I probably wouldn't have left it as soon as I did.
Yeah, I was in the same situation. I was in a psychiatric hospital, worked in a psych, and they shut down just like the mills did. And same thing. I don't know that I had any intentions of leaving until, so I know what you mean. It's one of those, it's like that movie, where they show you if it changed.
Yeah, like sliding doors.
Yeah.
I just got on. Yeah.
Well, this is a beautiful red blanket that you designed for Just Yarns. So how is designing for Just Yarns, like a small company like that, different, same as designing for like a big company? Or is design?
There's probably more similarities than differences, but I mean, one of the main differences is when I was designing for a mill, like you have a lot of requirements for testing, because I did upholstery. Um, so things have to have a certain abrasion, seam slippage, a certain strength. So as you're designing, you send it to the lab and they have to test to make sure, and if you're designing for like a movie theater that's going to get a lot of people sitting on it versus someone's fancy living room that they don't really sit in there, it can be different. And, requirements of cost and all that kind of thing. So with designing, for handwoven things, like I'm sort of freed from worrying about that. If I wanted to have a long float, I could have a long float, whereas previously, floats had to be a certain length. But the similarities are, it's always like problem solving. So I still had kind of a set of things that I was designing for. So in the case of this blanket, they want us to use yarns that they're manufacturing because it's going to be sold as a kit. So the considerations of like, how much do they want the kit to cost? How much yarn is going to go into it? So, you kind of get those parameters. And then also, it was going to be a blanket. So I knew I wanted it to be cozy. I knew I wanted it to have drape. I knew, and, one of the yarns was like a cotton linen. So I thought, okay, that one can be a little stiff on its own. So how can I mix it with some of the cotton to, bring out its softer qualities? And then I also wanted it to be fun to weave. I wanted it to have, I felt like if it's like super straightforward, then why would people need the kit? Like I wanted them to kind of either learn a little something or maybe just try a different technique that they might not have done otherwise. So I wanted to have like a little bit of an interest that would make it like worth buying a kit. Because, in the back of my head, similar to designing other fabrics, it's like I still want it to sell. It's like I want people to buy it. So, and I want people to buy their yarn. So that part is kind of, similar, but I felt a lot more liberated, not having to worry about like some of the hard, fast test requirements.
That's interesting. I know so little about designing. A lot of those things you mentioned, I would have never thought of it. So, but we're going to talk more about design with you later. There's more things I want to ask, but this is, you like going out and kind of being part of nature, and you keep this journal. And I love when I saw this, I got stuck on this. I just kept looking at this and thinking, what a great idea. It's that you view a scene and then you break down the colors into these rectangles. And I just thought, what an interesting way to approach. Because for me, a lot of times when I'm trying to draw something, it's just so overwhelming. But what an interesting approach to this. Can you talk more about how you do this?
Yeah. So a lot of these are so every time I love to travel. So anytime I go anywhere, I make a travel journal and bring it with me. And I have this little watercolor set, but I'm not a great like painter. And I used to get overwhelmed by a scene. I'd get somewhere like this is in Kauai, and it's like so beautiful. Like where do you even begin, or what do you even do? So I started just focusing on colors. Like, okay, and they're kind of like Pantone sized colors. I think the designer in me like, remember sort of playing with these Pantone chips. So I would just draw these little. So on one hand, it also just gets me started. It's like, okay, this is overwhelming, this blank page, but I just kind of want to sit here and look and just observe. So it really helps me just kind of slow down, stop, and just kind of observe things. Because I definitely find, especially when I'm traveling, like the moments like that I'm sitting out looking at something and just, it's like I'm looking at it in a different way. I'm not just snapping my picture and keeping moving, you know, I'm like, I remember those scenes sort of much more vividly because I've just kind of stared at them longer. And I try to think of like, you know, how's the air feel around me and how's, um, yeah. And then sometimes I'll get going and it's like, okay, maybe I can attempt to paint the ocean also. um, but yeah. And then the benefit is like, I also then sort of have these built-in color palettes, you know, like I feel like the colors in nature are always beautiful together, you know, so sometimes it's fun to just pick out like, you know, the little bit of a color from a flower that pops up or something else. And then I sort of have this little like reference things I can use later if I want to like make a stripe layout or something. Like I can kind of pull out these different colors that I have that I know like look good together. But
Okay.
yeah,
Do you
it's funny because I
pencils?
feel like a lot of people like think, oh, I can't keep a travel journal. Like I don't draw or I don't. It's like I don't either, you know. But just little things like that just can get you going.
I said this to you earlier, but I want you to teach that as a class at Convergence. I think we all want to learn how to do that and give ourselves permissions to do that. So next fall, you know, I want you to start signing up to teach that class. And I'm
I'm
going
here
to be the
for
first
it.
to sign up for it. Okay. Well, these are skeins of a and I apologize because I'm probably going to pronounce this really badly, but these are skeins of Ixtie, I think it's Ixtie. It's from Weaver House, and you dyed these. So first of all, would you tell us a little bit about this yarn, and then talk some about what it was like to dye it?
Yeah. So this yarn. So I was in Mexico in January, and I don't know. Like when I'm traveling, I also kind of like to think of like sense of place, like sort of like the terroir of this place and like what makes these things as it relates to fiber kind of unique. And there were like these agave plants. We did this hike through this like botanic garden. So I saw all these beautiful agave plants. And I thought, oh yeah, I know there's fiber. And then I saw the cactus that the cochineal bugs grow on. They weren't growing on them there, but I was like, oh, that's that kind. So I thought, oh, I should find some agave fiber and dye it with cochineal. Like that would be cool. So I think like in the hotel room that night, I was just Googling agave yarn, and Weaver House had this one that I think they sourced from Mexico. So I bought two little skeins and then I cut each one in half. So I had four of them. And I brought them my next dye date. And so I dyed one in indigo, one in cochineal, one in madder. And then the top one was in marigold. And it was so, it looked like caution tape. It was so vibrant. It was crazy. So I just did one dunk in the indigo and it got this green. So it was cool. I mean, it was definitely like chunkier and more ropey than I was, I think, expecting. I didn't really know what to expect. I just kind of knew I wanted something with agave. And so I could see where it could be cool if you were making like a basket or a net. But it said in the listing dyes well. So I thought, all right, I'll give it a shot with the dye. So I did mordant all of it first. And it took the dye like crazy. I mean, it was so vibrant. It's definitely sort of like the way it twisted. It kind of got a little weird and twisty, like when it got wet, sort of like, but I just thought, well, if it has some modeling to it, then that's what it has, you know, because I wasn't sure the dye would get all the way in there, but it really soaked it all up and turned out really cool. And then weaving with it was odd, you know, because now I'm like, well, now what do I do? Because it was a lot like a little bit more chunky than I thought. So I had a cochineal warp that I had dyed, the cotton that I dyed in cochineal. And I just wove it sort of like plain weave, but then like sort of a plain weave ground and then like, you know, 1 in 5 and 3 in 7 or so. So like sort of another layer of plain weave on top of it. And it just sort of like sat on top because I didn't have like a ton, but I have like these little squares with each of those bits of yarn on top of the cochineal, which kind of turned out cool. It was like a little color exercise almost to see how these different colors each worked with the cochineal. But definitely recommend it. I would love to try it again. I want to try more of these.
So are you always that adventurous kind of? I mean, I would have never thought of doing that, but I mean, is that the norm for you? Is that you
I
look outside the box?
Sometimes, I definitely have my favorite fibers that I go back to, but I
Uh-huh.
do get intrigued by some of these other ones. And I sort of love the idea of like what makes um like a place different, like I
Mhm.
love that like different sheep from different parts of the world and like and different plants that grow in different parts of the world and different dyes and just like how all these different people all around the world like adapted what they had into their textiles. And it really speaks to that place, so yeah, I do feel like when I'm away, like I can kind of, I think about it a little bit through that lens. And then I did have the cochineal already. So it was like, we had watched this little thing on TV about this cochineal uh, harvest, this family that would harvest the cochineal. And so when I saw that cactus, I was like, oh, that's it. Remember we saw But yeah, it's funny. I think Weaver House has another one and that looks finer. So I am tempted to give it another go and play around a little bit more.
Well, I put the Weaver House and the name of the yarn in the chat for y'all. I want y'all to run out and try it and tell us how it was.
Yeah, I'd love to see other examples.
Gave yarn. That's a new one. That's a new one. Um, Here's some more samples of your dyeing. These are beautiful pieces. Now, the one on the right, is that indigo?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was like a woven shibori.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then the one on the left was the Prochem, their fiber reactive dyes. So that
I'm
one was
always
a painted warp.
I'm always curious when I talk to people about dyeing, because for some people, it's just something they need to do to get to the end. They need a certain color or certain quantities of color or whatever. For other people, it is more of a process of more of the artistic process. Where are you in that continuum? Because both are important and have their place. Where are you in that continuum?
Yeah, I don't. It's funny. Like I don't live in a big place and can't dye here. So
Uh-huh.
I feel like if I had like my own dye kitchen, I'd probably dye more. Because it is the more you do it, the more you want to do it. I think there's something really satisfying about just like what colors are you going to get, what things are going to make certain colors, and if you want a certain color, trying to get that can be. And if you have any love of like science, like it can wake up that part of your brain. It's so fun to see how these different colors come together. um it's funny because sometimes I'll have in my head like, oh, I can dye, and then it's like, no, I can also just buy that yarn. I can just buy that color, like I don't need to dye everything. But for me too, there's a group of us that get together to dye. I had this one friend who years ago just kind of called a bunch of us who used to work in the textile industry and said, I'm making an indigo vat. Does anyone want to come over and put stuff in it? And
Wow.
10 of us were like, yes. So it started us all on this like journey of, and then it's like, oh, I bought some cochineal. Who wants to get together? Because you can do a lot more when you're all kind of pooling your different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so sometimes we kind of have like sort of dyeing parties in someone's backyard or Prochem, actually, if they're in Fall River, Massachusetts, but if they have classes, and if the classroom's not
Oh,
being used, you can rent that space, which is great because they have
really?
like, huge tables and a big sink, and you can get like, I can't get messy where I live. So um being able to go someplace, or if you want to paint a warp, you can stretch it out and stuff, which is awesome.
Yeah, I like the dye dates. And you just kind of bounce off of each other, right? Oh, I
Oh
like what you did, and this is a great idea.
yeah,
That's
it's
nice.
so much fun. The community of it is because, weavers, I feel like, yeah, if I'm with my Macomber, it's like I'm here. I can't
Yeah.
go anywhere. So it's always a good time to get together, show each other what we're working on, and
Yeah.
you know, can I put a skein in your thing and a skein, and you can suddenly have a lot of colors, which is helpful.
Um, I'm curious that you also do tapestries. You do these wonderful, there we go, these beautiful tapestries. And when I looked at them, I was so struck by, at first it was like, oh, you know, that looks like a boat on a lake or at sunset or, you know, something like that. And then I thought about how could be either one. It could be either a scene or it could just be color images, you know, just shapes. What is it that you go for? Do you want shapes? You want images? It doesn't matter.
It's a little bit, I still feel like I'm really new at tapestry and still learning. So I feel like I want to get better at images when I want them. But I'm definitely drawn to, I love the color mixing. It's, you know, because I've got these little bundles of like 3 strands and then just, you know, changing out one strand to get like a little shade. And I do love playing with the color that way. And the shape. I love the idea that like how much can I remove from a scene and still sort of have it be that place. Around the time I took the Intro to Tapestry online class, which I highly recommend if anyone is curious about tapestry. It was great. We went to see this Milton Avery exhibit at this museum in Connecticut, and there was all these paintings that were just so, it was like there was one that was like beach towels on the beach or something, and it was literally like 3 stripes and like these 2 polygons were the beach towels. And I just loved how kind of strange, just with these shapes and colors that you wouldn't necessarily think, but then once you know that that's what it is, it kind of looks like a beach scene. So I do sort of, especially since I've got like a smaller loom, I can't put everything. It's kind of like making those squares with the color. It's like, okay, this is this beautiful scene. There's too much in it. Like,
Right.
how can I just get it down? And so I'll like sometimes take a picture or start with a picture I have. I'll like bring it into Photoshop and kind of like play with the contrast a lot to really see the shapes. And then I'll print that out, kind of the size I want to weave it. And then I'll put like tracing paper over it and kind of go over the different areas. And then sometimes I'll even do like a couple of tracings just to like kind of pull stuff out, but then what elements are important that I need to keep in there. So it's
Was that what you learned at the workshop, at the class? Or is that
actually
your own
not that
special
part. I
approach?
think, yeah, that, I don't know, where I think partly just design school, maybe.
Oh,
Like having some of my design foundations classes or some, but I had done another of like this beach from Kauai, and I thought like, oh, how would I know that this is this beach? And it's like, oh, because of that shape of that mountain. So then the little tapestry was just that mountain, really. So, but I know that that's that place. And also in the beginning, I was trying to choose things that were like kind of aligned with like, all right, I just learned about color blending. So which scene can I, so I was trying to like incorporate some of the techniques I wanted to practice like in with, because I definitely found like, I love sort of the lessons to learn the things, but then I get a little bored. It's like, okay, I'm doing like the shape, the square and so I would say, okay, I'm going to take this technique, but I'm going to just try to use imagery that is like at least a little bit more like exciting for me to play with. But yeah, I love tapestry. Like it's been a fun adventure.
well, one thing that struck me about you is that you have such a wide range of fiber experiences. I mean, you've done commercial, you do, you know, the little tiny tapestry looms, you've done design, surface design, computer stuff. So I was thinking about, of all the fiber stuff that you do, what is it that gives you the most pleasure? And if you're willing to say, what is it that is the most like a chore?
Um, you know, it's funny, like certain things are for different reasons. Like I guess like the chore would be like maybe like hemming, like if I make like a bunch of dish towels and then I have to hem them all. Even though like it's also sort of satisfying, like at the end you iron them and you have this perfect little pile, you know, like it is satisfying, but I definitely feel like that's when I have to like put a podcast on and like just sit there sewing. Um, or like if I am dyeing, so like the rinsing, I mean, indigo, like I feel like I can just rinse forever. So stuff like that can get to be a lot. But yeah, like I also love knitting, and I feel like knitting is in this place in my life that's like like I almost file under like self-care. Like I don't
Aw.
really want to design any knitted stuff. I like to just buy patterns, buy beautiful yarn. I mean, I'll tweak or experiment a little bit, but like I kind of more want to know what I'm gonna get, and I like to like be on the couch or relaxing places or like bring it with me to stressful places. It's like I kind of joke it's like my emotional support knitting sometimes. Like, hey, I know I'm gonna be someplace a little stressful. I'm just gonna bring this in case in case I need it. Um, but then like the weaving part is definitely like where I feel like I can get more creative. Um, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just like sometimes I like to like change it up. Like like I like that the tapestry I can leave my studio and not just be like stuck in here like I am with the floor loom. Like I can go outside a little bit, and like the little tiny pin loom like that I almost exclusively use out, like in other places because it's fun to be outside weaving. But yeah, I don't know, like weaving and knitting are probably equal. If I had to give something up, maybe the dyeing, but I wouldn't really want to.
Yeah, you don't have to give them. You know, I just always think it's funny, like some people are like, you know, I hate warping. And then somebody else says, I love warping. And, somebody else says, I hate putting it on the loom. I love putting it on the loom. So it's always funny to hear.
Yeah,
And you have such a wider variety. I just didn't know.
I mean, I guess like when I think back to like designing for like a mill, that part can get like because you're trying like there's so much trial and error, and
Yeah.
you're not always right by the loom. So it's like, okay, you're writing up, especially if you want to try out a totally new construction or something. It's like, okay, you do it all and send it off, and it's like, hope it works, and then like sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And, I mean, it's part of the process, but that can sometimes get frustrating because you're like, oh, I just want to be able to make all these changes in real time or something.
Yeah. Well, when you're designing, do you have to do like a mind shift when you're designing like for a mill versus um like for gist or whatever? I mean, do you approach it the same or do you really have to think completely different?
Maybe the process is kind of similar. Um,
Mm.
definitely like designing for like a mill or something. It's very much like, is this gonna sell? Because it's a lot to do all, like I was just saying, like try out these new weaves and whether or not they work or um so it can in that respect it can get easy to kind of fall back on maybe stuff works or stuff sells, or everyone wants the next version of that bestseller. um so I feel like I had to be a little bit more aware of sort of the outside world too, like what's trending, um what's kind of happening in the industry at large. But I don't necessarily have to do that for some other things. I mean, for
Yeah.
something like a weaving pattern, like the one I did for Gist, it's like, I do want that one to sell too, but it's like a totally different, like I also know I'm doing that for other people who love textiles.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like I want weavers to love it too for, I want it to feel good. And I want whoever's, like with that blanket, it's like I picture that too as something people might want to gift, so like I want it to be enjoyable for the weaver, but also whoever's going to get it, if it's going to go to a little baby or,
Yeah.
you know, um,
Well, I wanted to point out this image and why I chose it because I know I keep saying this about your wide range, but this is a great example. I mean, on the left is a scarf that you made. The middle piece is one of your art pieces. And then on the right is some commercial fabric that you designed. And I know I keep saying this, but I'm just struck by the wide variety of areas that you do in fiber. And I just can't imagine trying to shift from one to the other. That's why I was asking that. Because you're right, it's for a different outcome, I guess.
yeah,
But they're all gorgeous.
thank you. Yeah, I feel like the art ones, I mean, those are definitely like freeing. And it's funny, I feel like during the pandemic that really kind of pushed me to like I just had a lot of time like in lockdown. So I was weaving a lot, and I did like this online course with Pam Paul. She's a great weaver. She was she worked at Philly Textile when I was there. And so we kind of reconnected. And so I feel like a lot of the art pieces, like she really kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone to just, and it was nice not to think about like, are my selvages perfect? Or, you know, is my loom gonna be happy? You know, because certain things, it's like, especially like the commercial stuff, like if the loom starts banging or whatever, then that's not gonna be good. Um, yeah, it did kind of get me thinking a little bit in a different way. And also some like the stuff with some of the art stuff, it's like no one has to see it either. Like
Yeah,
I
that's
don't have to
true.
put this on Instagram. You know, I don't have to. Like if I don't want to, if it's weird, I mean, I have piles of stuff that I'm just like, not sure, but it might, even if it's just a spark to something else or just like an interesting process that's like, okay, I'm kind of glad I tried that. I don't think I was that successful, but like I can kind of keep playing with this idea. Like sometimes I think you forget that like not everyone has to see everything. You can just do things alone at home and, you know, and just kind of keep playing. Cause I feel like sometimes it's, I don't know, with like social media or like Etsy stores, like I taught someone to knit once and I told her, I'm like, I'm warning you, if you put a picture of these booties on Instagram, everyone's gonna tell you to open an Etsy shop, you know? I was like, you can just knit for the fun of it. Like you don't have to, um, I mean, Instagram's great, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's nice
Yes.
to be able to like, to just kind of do whatever you want and see if it works.
Yeah, we're all pretty hard on ourselves, I think.
Yeah, it's
Well, I
true.
love it that you are so inspired by space, and you've talked about that a lot on your site. In that, um, you talked about walking through the woods, and it was more than, oh, I'm looking for a, a picture that I like that I can use it to weave, or some kind of images or even materials. But you said that nature kind of unblocked you. And I want you to talk some more about that. And then also, I'm curious, is that something that came like from your childhood, or was that something you found as an adult?
I think a little bit more as an adult. I mean, I don't think I had like a super like outdoorsy childhood, but I think it was definitely sort of a Gen X suburban. Like we were outside a lot, you know, like rode our bikes a lot, and like summers we were playing in people's pools and outside. So I definitely feel like I like being outside. You know, like winter is hard for me, and I kind of learned like I just need to get really good outerwear so I can still go for walks because otherwise I'm just get really grumpy. And take vacations, like get out of New England in winter if at all possible. But yeah, I feel like the older I've gotten, the more I just love seeing like beautiful things. Like I love trying to go for a hike somewhere and just sort of be in awe of something. I mean, Rhode Island's so beautiful and like our ocean is so close. So I just love being able to like get to the beach and just I love kind of like revisiting a place to see how it changes too through the seasons. It's like, okay, this one beach that I go to, it's you go 3 months later, and there's different things washed up on the shore, there's different things growing, there's, you know, it's the same place and it's always giving you different things. And but yeah, I love to kind of think of like what's I don't know, like the word terroir. My husband studies wine, so I feel like we talk about terroir a lot, but it's like what makes like these particular little spots like um unique in that way, like what's here that's not somewhere else.
I was also thinking about how it, and not to put words in your head or anything, but I was thinking about how, I guess because this is hard for me to be where I am at that point in time of just being in nature and, like you said earlier about what it feels like or what the air feels like or whatever. So
Yeah.
that struck me about getting unblocked too, about using that in that way.
And I feel like when I travel, I always bring a travel journal and I have like all these different things I do like in that journal and these little kind of exercises and stuff. Like I'll make these little like trail maps that like as I'm walking, I'll just kind of jot little things down or like it's super quick sketch or and not even really stopping, but just and yeah, when I took that class during the pandemic, I was like, I need to do that here. Like, cause now I'm just walking, you know, and I'm familiar with a lot of this stuff, but so I would bring my sketchbook like kind of for the class and it was like I felt like I was seeing these familiar places like through new eyeballs, because it just, like I
Yeah.
was like zeroing in on different things, or sometimes I would force myself like, okay, what do I hear? You know, or like, what does all this stuff feel like? Like today I'm just gonna sit on this one rock and like just feel everything around me. And um so I feel like for me, like having a sketchbook or a journal with me doing that stuff kind of forces me to like just zero in and just try to pay attention to it in that way. And then I really appreciate it a lot more. So I do feel like if I'm just feeling like creatively kind of like a little stuck, it's like, all right, I just need to like go for a walk somewhere. Like, let's go to the ocean, or let's, like, I just need to see something different.
Well, now that I've kind of pushed you into that more existential, I'm going to pull you back into, you also pick up things as you walk, and you put them in your weaving. So with this found material, how much of it is the visual is appealing, and how much of it is there's a symbolism or a meaning to what you find, or either?
Um, yeah, I mean, it kind of starts like I'm just trying to see what's there, like, and like what's weavable. So it's like, okay, like sometimes I'll just keep finding like a certain type of leaf or something, and then I'll just start gathering them. It's like, oh, I'm seeing tons of these. Okay, so I'll kind of work with those. Um, I mean, sometimes I specifically will kind of look around, so like, okay, what's here? But yeah, I just try to see like what's catching like what keeps catching my eye. And sometimes it's different. Like, one time in fall, I got all these like pine needles, and then I was like, ooh, they're different colors. Like some were more brown and some were more green. So then I kind of was trying to get a little range of all the colors that I found, and then used those. Um, and this piece was at this local farm had like a plein air art making day. So I just thought like, oh, that's cool. I'll just go and bring my tiny loom and my sketchbook. So I kind of walked around first and just sort of like listened and looked um and gathered up a few things, and then I just sat and wove. And that yarn, I had been there a couple of months prior for like a natural dyeing day. They were dyeing with marigolds, so I had brought some yarn. So I thought like, oh, I dyed this yarn with the marigolds from this farm, so I'll bring some of
Oh,
that yarn with me to play with. So yeah, so it was fun and just kind of got me outside, and I
a
feel
full
like these
circle.
little ones, they're very small, so it's like a little study, like I don't I always just kind of feel like it's just getting wheels turning maybe for other things.
Absolutely. So what's next for you?
I don't know, that's a good question. Well, I definitely want to keep like going with tapestry and keep building on those skills, because I feel like I still have a lot to learn in that. But I've kind of had a goal to do an artist residency somewhere. Like I
Ooh,
love the thought of having just like 2 weeks or something where I can just kind of have time to devote, because yeah, I mean, I work full time, so it's hard to, kind of sometimes just have the space to like have to just kind of think and do things and experiment and play. So that has been a goal. So maybe, hopefully, that's something coming up. And maybe I'll teach at Convergence.
there you go. Put that on your bucket list. We want you here.
Right. That would be
We also
fun.
want to hear about your, internship when you get back. We will all live vicariously through your internship.
Hope so.
All right, we've got questions, so let's take some of those. Carrie Gordon said, with the agave yarn, did you use an alum mordant? Love the natural colors.
I think so. Yeah. I,
Okay.
de I definitely used, I think it was alum. It was from Botanical Colors. So whatever one I use for like cellulose fibers, I used that one. And I think I did it overnight too. I don't know how
Okay.
much that helps, but it really took it.
Um, Karen Powell. Karen, this is a great question. I'm sorry I didn't ask it. She goes, what is your favorite thing to make?
I do have a soft spot for, even though I love doing the art things, I do have a soft spot for functional textiles too. Like I do love just I love the world having more beautiful textiles. So, I just think everyone should have gorgeous dish towels that they want to that feel good when you're using them, and that you want to like hang on to longer. I sort of like I hate like kind of throwaway textiles, like sort of break my heart. So, I do, yeah, I do. It's funny. I think of my like dish towels sometimes too, is like just like a great in between project. Like if I've been doing something a little bit more like involved, then it's like a fun dish towel, like beautiful colors that's fast to weave. Um, I love those.
Oh, I agree. And she also wants to know, what is your favorite loom to use?
Probably my Macomber. It feels like home.
And people, of course, are asking, what is behind you?
Uh, I've
Oh,
got
yeah. There you go. On your
yarn.
right. Yes.
I have, this is actually another woven shibori
Oh,
um,
cool.
scarf. This was like an alpaca that I dyed with
Ooh,
ago. Um,
what is the loom?
that I did. Oh, that's my Macomber. Oh, sorry. I was like, what's what behind me? I've got a lot behind me. Yeah, this is the I hung this there because I thought, oh, I should have had a warp on it. That would have been pretty. But yeah, no,
No
that's
shoulds. No shoulds. People love seeing the looms in the background. Is it an 8 shaft, 4 shaft?
it's a 16.
Ooh,
I know.
wow.
Which in retrospect, I think I probably would have been fine with the 10. I've rarely used all 16. In
Uh-huh.
theory, I'm happy they're there, but
Yeah.
it also gets really heavy to weave when you're using all 16, like physically on your body. Like it can be hard depending on what structure you're doing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay.
find I use 8 a lot, but sometimes 10 and 12. But
I don't know if you said this or not. I apologize. I'm in a fog. I don't know. Good drugs. But anyway, you were talking about the agave. Did you say what you ended up doing with it?
I wove little you can grab them, just these little squares.
Did you? Good question, Janice. Thank you. Appreciate you asking that.
I just Yeah, so I have this like
Oh, wow.
steel dyed warp. So it's kind of like plain weave, and then I just sort of did like another kind of on top of it
Uh-huh.
to put each of the, because I didn't have a ton of it, and it's not super like flexible, and it is kind of it's rough. So
Uh-huh.
like I don't know what I'd want to do it. I don't know what to do with these. But they're I felt like it was a cool kind of color study to see also how different like the cochineal looked with
Uh-huh.
like the indigo versus that one. But
What was the warp?
cotton, just cotton that I dyed. I think like maybe an 8's2 cotton or 10's2.
Kathy Wilcox wants to know, is there any type of weaving you enjoy most, or do you enjoy the variety the most?
I do kind of enjoy the variety. It's funny, I haven't designed anything for jacquard in a really long time, and I would love to play with that again. I don't know. I need to find like a TC someone. I need to befriend someone locally with like a TC1 or something. But
We're going to send you up to Praxis.
I yeah. Um
There's your internship.
yeah, maybe. I'm
There you
gonna write that
go.
down. Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot the question. I got distracted by like a TC1.
What do you like to make? And
Yeah, I do. It's funny. I do love structure, and then yet I feel like I've mostly done plain weave for like the past 2 years. Like
Mhm.
especially with some of the art pieces, I've done a lot of these ones with like little pockets that I'll put like little found things in, like a
Uh-huh.
shell or so those are kind of like double cloth in those areas, and then plain weave all around, so I kind of have to thread it like in sections. But yeah, I feel like I should play with some more structures. I feel like I've been in a plain weave groove but plain weave, you could like spend the rest of your life only weaving plain weave and you'd still have lots of beautiful things.
All right, Rachel Wilkels wants to know what's on your the loom behind you.
Oh, that's so that's the first warp I ever put on the bigger Murex tapestry loom. And those are kind of extra. So I had signed up for that. So I did the intro to tapestry online class first. And then I did like Rebecca Mezoff had the summer of weaving like last summer, which was fun because she kind of gives you these prompts. And so it definitely pushed me to kind of do different things. And then so I signed up for that tapestry discovery box through Gist, where it's like every quarter you
Oh
get
yeah,
like
yeah.
7 yarns and a lesson. So that warp has eccentric weaving lesson and then wedge weave. So I need to keep practicing. but but it was fun just to, I mean, it was the bigger loom is a little bit intimidating actually. Like I've been on the little saffron for so long that's just kind of right here. So this one being upright is
Oh really?
just it's taken a little bit to get used to.
Oh, I never thought about that. How that would feel different.
Yeah, it was because I guess like I could use the saffron in the little stand, but I think because I'm so used to like a floor loom, I just kind of keep it on the desk.
Uh-huh.
So this was like the first time that I wove like kind of straight up. So it's
Oh,
cool. So I do recommend. I've been enjoying those classes too. I kind of paused it for a little bit just because I was like, I have so many lessons, and then I feel like I don't get to weave because I'm like doing the exercises. But I've learned a lot through those.
somebody wants to know, Tina Davis wants to know if you ever tried hibiscus dye.
I have not.
I'm assuming she means the flower.
I guess so, yeah. I haven't tried that. I've done marigolds, and then I feel like a lot of the other dyes I've done from like I bought them through like botanical colors, but marigold's the only one that I have tried that I've started from the flowers. Hibiscus, yeah, I should add that to my list. I don't know where I'd get them, but
I'm curious. We got another question that because you've gone through the whole process of being a student, being a professional and that sort of thing, what is something you would tell people who are starting out, wanting to get into fiber? What would you say to them? Kind of looking back on it now, kind of thing.
um I mean, I definitely feel like if you want to be like in the textile industry, kind
Mhm.
of from that side of things. I mean, I feel like I've been out of it a little while, but it's not the easiest industry to be in, I, truthfully. And I think a lot has changed, but it's also a little bit hard if, because part of the thing, like when my mill's closed, it's like, oh, well, if I wanted to move to New York, I could have gotten a job down there. But I was really happy up here. I loved living in
Oh,
Providence, and I was at a point in my life where like I wasn't ready to leave here. Um, so I feel like sometimes it is hard to find jobs, especially if you're not going to want to be in New York or where some of these hubs are. But in terms of people wanting to get into fiber just for like the joy of it, I just feel like it's such a great thing to make. I mean, I just feel like there's so many possible. You can spend the rest of your life, on any one of these tiny things, and you'd
uh-huh.
never get bored. Like plain weave, it's like you spend the rest of your life. It's just like there's so many beautiful yarns, so many different like, and I just feel like textiles just like connect you to like everybody comes from a place where they already are connected to cloth in some way. So it's like you're already kind of starting from that point. And it's like if you travel, I mean, I get like I've been in places where it's like, you don't speak the same language, but if they know you're a weaver, it's like, oh, like you just make those connections they're just so natural because you
Yeah.
already have this thing in common. So I just feel like, I mean, I'm always pushing textiles on people. I've taught so many people to knit, it's like I'm always kind of like I just feel like it's so it just makes you so happy. Like it's very relaxing. It's very, but it's also can be super challenging and so much math, so much science, it can sort of be however much you want or need. And And the nicest people. I mean,
Oh,
textile
yes.
people are the nicest people.
They are.
It's like, if you meet other textile people, I did like this knitting circle one time. Uh, it was like a local theater was putting it on in conjunction with like a play they were doing. I forget, but we get there and there's this group of like 20 women, and one by one people come in and pull out their knitting, and like 10 minutes in, the facilitator's like, "Oh, I thought I was gonna have to like kick things off, but you all just instantly." Like, well, we all like have knitting, so we've instantly got something to talk about. But
Yes. It's our people.
yeah,
We
exactly.
find our people.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on here today. I really do appreciate it. It's been wonderful talking with you. I feel like there's so much more I want to ask you about, the business aspect and all that, but I really do appreciate it. I encourage you all to go to Kristin's website and see her work and learn much more about her. She does some beautiful, beautiful work. Kristin, thank you so much for being on here. We do appreciate it. I look forward to seeing what happens after your internship.
Thank you.
We want to thank our sponsor too. Thank you, Claudia. Claudia Coco was our sponsor today for Textiles and Tea. I hope you enjoyed the program, Claudia, and we do thank you for your generous donation to make Textiles and Tea happen. We appreciate it. If you want to sponsor an episode of Textiles and Tea, or your business or your guild, a group of people, we've had a lot of people doing that lately, please go online to wespendie.org and you can sign up for an episode and be the sponsor. If you have any questions, give us a call. We'll be glad to help you with that too. Spinning and Weaving Week is going to happen next week. Can you believe it? That seemed like so far away, and it's next week. If you haven't signed up yet, be sure you do. It's only $30 for the whole week. You can watch it whenever you want because it's recorded, and that means you can watch it several times if you like. We've got studio tours. We got some wonderful studio tours, thread talks, the fashion show. I need more people in the fashion show. Come on, y'all. I know you've been busy. All that stuff you learned at Convergence and conferences this summer. Let's see what you make. Let's share with each other what we've been doing. And we want to see you guys at the fashion show. We also have sponsorships still available. I know some of the guilds have talked to me about being sponsors, and we've got some wonderful vendors. It's that time of year. You're getting ready to make things for the holidays, either gifts or things for your home. And so now's the time to be thinking about getting that yarn and those supplies that you need. You come see our vendors. You'll be able to talk with them and see what they've got. We've got some special deals going on if you check out our website, just in time to buy supplies for the holidays. It's October the 7th through the 14th. That's Monday. Textiles and Spinning and Weaving Week. So we hope you'll join us there. We want to thank everybody who supported us through donations and memberships. All your donations help these programs, whether it's Textiles and Tea or Spinning and Weaving Week, Careers in Textiles, and we keep looking for ways to offer you more and keep the fiber community going strong. So thank you for your donations. If you would like to donate and or join, you can do so at wespendie.org. And if you have any questions, you can just give us a call. If you've missed any of the episodes, you want to watch this episode again, want to share it with a friend, you can watch it on the HGA Facebook page, and later you can watch it on YouTube. I encourage you to sign up for YouTube because when you do, if you subscribe, you'll get a notice when a new episode has been uploaded. And so I want you to be able to see all these episodes again. Again, my thanks to Tegan and Katie for stepping in while I was gone. We appreciate it. And next week we have Rihanna Grigo. I hope I pronounced her name right. I'm excited to see her work and talk with her. So I hope you all have a wonderful week and happy tea.